In the legal world, there is a combination of forces that feed a corrupt and suffocating legal system for attorneys. Law schools, law professionals, judges, and even the firms themselves for whom you work create a system, a matrix, if you will, that is nothing like what you thought when you passed the bar exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you escape this legal matrix, leading you out of the proverbial desert to be free of the bondage of the matrix. Hosted by Bryce D. Nyer, attorney at law with over 30 years experience in the trenches of civil and criminal litigation at the state, federal, and international levels. He's a highly accomplished and resourceful legal professional, a true master of his craft, and he's here to help you get your life back. Here's your host, Bryce D. Nyer.
All right. Another episode of Escape the Legal Metrics with yours truly, Bryce D. Nyer, coming at you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg. That's right. Where everyday men and women don the uniform and do what? They go wage war and fight for the very freedoms that we so often take for what? We take them for granted. Yeah. All right, so the topic tonight is going to be pretty interesting. Yeah, we're going to talk about, again, about the judiciary and the separation of powers. Now, for you law students, and most of you, or all of you lawyers, there's no doubt in my mind that you have taken required courses in constitutional law. And you would, of course, learned about the separation of powers and that they're not supposed to really tread in each other's ponds unless it's absolutely necessary. But recently, and over the last couple of years, I have personally witnessed the judicial branch encroaching into the other two branches, that being the executive and the legislative branches, not only at the federal level, but the state levels too. So it begs the question, who is, or which branch is the most important? Which one? Now, I would say that actually they're all important, but the most powerful one is the judicial branch because they can set aside executive orders or put stays on them, set aside laws, reverse cases, affirm cases, or they can just, what you see a lot that's going on, they're becoming activists, going outside, in my opinion, their judicial role. They're exceeding their bounds of authority. And to me, a lot of them are creating havoc across the country. Now, I will give you that based upon the fact that this country is in such turmoil and everybody's filing lawsuits over, these so-called rights that everybody's creating, that they're tossing this in the laps of the judiciary. But in reality, the judiciary should allow the legislatures to do their job to properly, notice I said the word properly, enact laws, which a lot of times are state legislatures in our U.S. Congress. They don't always do that. And I get it. You have to make sure that in the executive branch, you don't have a president who's a dictator that will usurp his or her authority, which can be subject to judicial review based on Marbury versus Madison, the case that was decided at the very beginning of the 19th century. And if you haven't read that, you need to go back because it's a very landmark case, and it's powerful. But it gives me, deep pause and deep concern because what I have seen across the United States is just this unreal activism by state and federal judges who have these political agendas, or they're aligned with political parties or political agendas. And I think they've lost their way. I think they've sold their souls. I do. There's no doubt in my mind, based on some of the decisions and some of the rulings, that they're just, how can I say this? They're crazy town. Yeah, they're crazy town. And I'm going to say it, and I have the right to say it, and I'm going to say it. And I watch also across the world, like in the UK and other countries, where they're just canceling people and canceling free speech. And even if you just pray outside a certain zone or your thought, or you post stuff on social media, they're arresting you. unreal, arresting you. I've never seen such Orwellian actions in my entire life as I have, especially since when COVID started a couple years ago. And it just, to me, was the beta test, and we were all the control group across the world from all these governments, and they used the judicial systems. They used them as the weapon of choice to usurp freedoms that, at least in the United States, are constitutionally guaranteed, or at least we thought they were. See, our country cannot survive if we don't enforce the U.S. Constitution. If we don't enforce it, if we don't abide by it, then we're nothing more than a banana republic. And if you don't rein in these wildcat judges in the federal and state judiciary, they become mini tyrants. They do. And in the federal system, once they're appointed, especially at the district level, the Federal Court of Appeals, and of course, U.S. Supreme Court, they're appointed for life. And it takes an act of God to get them removed. And at the state level, it almost takes an act of God. Either if they're elected, you can vote them out in the election, or if they're appointed, there's a disciplinary action. But the reality is, most people don't even pay any attention at all to what their local judges do. They don't even know who they are. People know who the U.S. Supreme Court justices are and what they do because they make landmark decisions that affect our very lives, personally and professionally. But what I see going on across the world, it's dangerous, and it's downright damn scary. It really is. And for lawyers that live and operate in truth, there's a war that's being waged upon them. There's a war being waged upon us to step in line, toe the line, and don't say anything. Go along to get along. And for me, I just can't do that. I just can't do that. And to me, the judiciary these days, and it probably has in the past, but it operates to me through intimidation and fear. Because if you piss a judge off, to be blunt, then they'll make life a living hell for you until you can hopefully get some relief somewhere. I mean, the Court of Appeals and the state Supreme Courts and the U.S. Supreme Courts and the Federal Court of Appeals were designed and were supposed to keep the trial courts in check if they abused their discretion. And then the ultimate state Supreme Courts and the U.S. Supreme Court were to keep the lower appellate courts in check if they went off the grid. But the problem is when you have so many of them creating havoc and abusing their power, you get into judicial tyranny. And when you have that going on, it makes the war 10 times harder. This is what I've been trying to tell people for years about the legal matrix. People think, well, what's the legal matrix? And the reality is it's any person or persons or entity or agency, individually or collectively, that use the judicial system, the laws, or usurp the laws to basically have total control over you and take all of your freedoms away. And this is why it is critical to have, to raise this army of 1 million litigators who live and operate in truth and are true legal warriors, because we just don't have that right now across the world. We have some that live in truth, some that operate in truth. And then you have the rest that are just so institutionalized and so brainwashed that they just can't even discern truth from lies, or truth from delusion, or truth from deception. And this is what I'm trying to tell you, law students. You think the only thing you're thinking about typically in your third year is, I just want to get out, pass the bar, and get a job. But the problem is when you do that, if that's all you think about, if the only thing is the almighty retainer fee, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to be a lonely person, because eventually there's going to come that day. I guarantee it 100%. When you look in the mirror and there's huge gap, this huge void in your soul. And it's because you sold out for so long that you lost your way. And the judicial branch is your co-conspirator. And they're a catalyst of what's wrong for truth and justice in this world. And in particular, of course, within the United States. Every single day, I see something on social media, or I read some article, or I see some video where the courts have they've gone bonkers. They've gone bonkers. They've become these tyrants and dictators and issuing these orders that just are not grounded in fact and law, and they just make the rules up as they go along. I see this too with some of my colleagues in the courtroom. They'll come up with some of the most stupid, anal, legal positions and just make stuff up to fit their narrative, to make themselves look good, or they just don't want to be bothered to have to do the work that they need to do. I mean, it just happened like today. Someone trying to slough off their assignment that they're supposed to do. It's not my responsibility or accountability to do, it's theirs. But they try and weasel out of it. And see, that's what's happening with the judiciary. They're becoming judicial weasels, lemmings, being led to this ultimate slaughter. And what's happening is they're leading people to the slaughter. Now, I've been a big history buff most of my life, and especially during World War II. And I want to talk to you also, because this falls in line with what we're talking about tonight. When Hitler rose to power in 1933, one of the first things he did, and especially Goering was the number 2 guy, is they took control of the judiciary. And they rewrote laws, and they put their lemmings on the bench. And there was no real truth or justice. There was only the truth of the Nazi state. And ultimately, people that were hauled before these courts, especially those accused of being communist or opposing Hitler, they were thrown in concentration camps or killed. In fact, one of the most heinous judges in Nazi Germany was Freisler. And he was ultimately killed in 1945 in a bombing. But he is the one who sentenced numerous people to death, and especially the conspirators in the July 1944 plot, the ones that tried to kill Hitler with the bomb. But the point I'm making is Nazi Germany was a prime example, just like the Soviet Union, just like communist China, where the courts are not free and independent. They follow the party line. And this is a dangerous thing, because in the United States today, you have many judges at the state and federal level that are following the party line. They're not interested in the truth. They're not interested in justice. They're only interested in serving the state or serving their own selfish needs, to get on the bench, to get their judicial retirements, their benefits, or to kowtow favors. So after they come off the bench, they get these big contracts or book writing deals or whatever the hell it is. But your judiciary has been hijacking the other branches of government for years, and especially within the last couple of years. And you law students right now have got to stand up. You got to wake up. You got to get off the bench. You got to get in the game. You got to dust off. You got to shake off the fog, and you got to get clarity and focus about who and what you are. And the same thing with you lawyers across this country and the world. Because if you don't live in truth and you don't operate in truth and you don't have the foundations of body being balanced and business intact, then you're just like the folks in Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945. And you'll become tyrants. And you'll serve the state. And there'll be no truth or justice to be found in you. And you'll just wander and wander. And you'll have no soul, and you'll have no heart, and you'll just be another lost soul. That's all you'll be. So I want you law students and you lawyers, I want you to think about this. It's not funny. This is happening in our world today. And if we don't get control of this, we don't get a grip on this, if we don't wage war against the legal matrix, then I guarantee you, I assure you that one day they'll come for you. All right, this has been another episode of Bryce D. Nyer, host of your favorite podcast, Escape the Legal Matrix. Again, coming live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg. That's right. I'm going to say it again, Fort Bragg, where every day men and women don the uniform and they fight for truth and justice so that we can live in freedom, again, that we so often take for granted. This is Bryce out.